message is titled Me or We. Me or We. And I want to talk about compassion and how we need more of that and how it is important. So to start things off, I came across a letter written by Singa, the courtesy lion, who champions the kindness movement in Singapore. I really loved him. He's very, very cute. My sister loves him too, She always wants to take a photo together with him when he's spotted. So he wrote a letter and it's titled, Open Letter to Singapore. I Quit. But let me caveat that, okay, that our dear Singa didn't quit, all right? It was a way for him and his friends to stir up conversations about kindness and consideration in Singapore. So it's a little bit funny, I find, and a little bit, okay? So I'm going to read you his letter. So it goes, Dear Singapore, I quit. I need a long break, and you could probably use a break from me too. I get it. No one likes being nagged at, even if it's about being kind and gracious. I suppose it's about time. After all, I've been doing this for over 30 years. First as the courtesy lion, and more recently as your mascot for kindness. And I'm just too tired to continue facing an increasingly angry and disagreeable society. It's been said that kindness shouldn't be a campaign, that kindness should be a part of values education, that people in authority, at work, in school, at home, and in government should lead by example. Fair enough. I suppose it's time for real people to step up and for the mascot to step aside. It's not that we aren't a gracious society or that kindness is not innate in all of us. But some days, it feels like many of us believe in or care about expressing kindness. Like not many of us believe in or care about expressing kindness. We say we have so many problems. How can we be kind? Or fix my problems first, then we can talk about being kind. Should we let kindness and graciousness disappear while we fix these quote-unquote bigger problems? If kindness only for the good times, does graciousness come with terms and conditions? If we can only be nice if other people are nice to us first, who will start the ball rolling? Or can we rise above our differences and be gracious, even in challenging times? A final word before I go. Let's be responsible for our actions. We can refuse to give up our seats on the train if we don't want to, but let's not blame it on the crowd. We can go online and be rude to others, but let's not think it doesn't count because it's anonymous. We can let our anger and disagreement dictate the kind of people and society we want to be, or we can decide to be gracious even when frustrated. We are responsible for the sort of society we encourage and create. It is our choices that determine who we are. All the best, Singapore. Your friend, Singa. Okay, when I first read this, I was shocked. I saw I quit. I was like, no, what happened? My heart was like, oh, poor Singa. What happened? Are you okay? Well, but funny thing, right, is there were people complaining and said that Singa fake resignation lacked kindness and was unkind. Someone even said that it's the epitome of unkindness. Another person is offended that he is generalizing Singaporeans as ungracious people. When I was reading the comments, I was like, my goodness. I mean, Singa the lion can do with a little bit of frustration, right? After 30 years of being a kind lion. And we can all do better to be kind to Singa, right? I mean, let's just let him live. So precisely what we want to talk about, to be compassionate. Okay, what is compassion? Compassion is this idea of empathy and care. So it's not just empathy. It's more than just empathy, which is understanding and sharing in the feeling of other people, which is, by the way, not the easiest thing to do, right? Or is it the top of the mind thing to do? Compassion takes it even further than empathy. One step further. To be compassionate is to care actively, to ask ourselves, how can we help? It is finding opportunities to love, to alleviate the distress of others, is to make the world better. So why this dilemma of we or me, right? Why did I title it we or me? Because as human beings, you and I, are we ruled by self-interest alone? Or are we meant to come together for a greater good and a greater common purpose? Is compassion necessary for humans to flourish? Do we need compassion to survive and be resilient, both as individuals and also as a society and as a community? Well, many religions say so, right? Belief is the case. Jesus believes it's the case, and he speaks at length about it. That we need compassion to flourish. But the question is it true? Right? Which is a really good question. Because human nature can be extremely selfish. We are capable of terrible acts of atrocity and greed, right? We see on a grander scale like war, in unbelievably cruel acts committed to another person, but also evidence at a much smaller, minor scale by all of us. In tiny acts that we do when we choose to ignore someone else who needs something. When we choose to be selfish, when we choose to step over other people to get what we want. That is one thing. But yet, on the other hand, as a humanity, we are also capable of incredible acts of love and kindness. Right? Unbelievably generous people. The kind that move you to tears. The kind that tug at your heartstrings and make you wonder, how can anybody be so kind and so wonderful? Well, many people, many scientists believe the former, that human beings are selfish, that we are all about accumulating resources. Kindness and generosity, they are all facades that we use to get what we want. And in the end, selfishness determines what we really do and what we really behave. And when I hear this, I'm really sad, what a bleak world, right? Except there is a problem with this perception. Because being selfish doesn't always lead to the best outcome. So in the short term, right, you can force people to do what you want. You can force people to get what you want. You can step on people to get to the top. But in the long run, it shows that compassion leads to better outcomes. Research has found that in the long haul, right, it is individuals and communities that don't engage in escalation of violence, but instead in compassion and in cooperation that will win in the long run. And Jesus teaches about compassion and how we might act and live. And we're going to read a couple of verses. Pretty interesting and pretty good. In Luke chapter 6, 31 to 39, in Message version. Okay, it says, here is a simple rule of thumb for behavior. Ask yourself what you want people to do for you, and then grab the initiative to do it for them. I tell you, love your enemies. Help and give without expecting a return. You will never, I promise, regret it. Very radical sentences. Live out this God-created identity the way our Father lives towards us, generously and graciously, even when we are at our worst. Our Father is kind, you be kind. Don't pick on people, jump on their failures, criticize their faults, unless, of course, you want the same treatment. Don't condemn those who are down, that hardness can boomerang. Be easy on people, you'll find life a lot easier. Give away your life, and you'll find life given back. Very radical. Give away your life and you'll find it back. Not merely given back, but given back with bonus and blessing. Giving, not getting is the way. Generosity begets generosity. 27:30. To you who are ready for the truth, I say this. Love your enemies. Let them bring out the best in you, not the worst. Wow. Okay. No more payback. Live generously. 41 to 42. It's easy to see a smudge on your neighbor's face and be oblivious to the ugly sneer on your own. Do you have the nerve to say, let me wash your face for you, when your own face is distorted by contempt? It's this I know better than you mentality again, playing a holier than thou part instead of just living on your own part. Wipe that ugly sneer off your own face and you might be fit to offer a washcloth to your neighbor. So much truth that we can unpack, right, from all these. It's very radical. So how can we be more compassionate? There are three mindsets that I want to draw from what we just read that would be helpful for us as we seek to become more compassionate humans. So the first is this idea: do unto others what you want others to do unto you. So in verse 31, right, Jesus says, here is a simple rule of thumb of behavior. They ask yourself what you want people to do for you then take the initiative and do it for them. So do you know in 1993, right, 143 leaders of the world's major faiths endorsed this ethical commitment, what they call the Golden Rule, which is do unto others what you want others to do unto you. And what this is essentially saying is equal treatment towards all humanity. So in Jesus' time, this is a fairly radical and egalitarian message. In a social setting where there are different classes of people, clans, tribal boundaries, there are also whom they label as outcasts and outsiders in those days. So Jesus' message to do unto others what you want others to do unto you challenges these boundaries. It really calls people to see beyond their labels and their titles, to extend love and kindness and dignity to not just those in their circle, but beyond their circle, to everyone whom they meet. The question is it radical even in our times? Yes, definitely. Is it surprising? Yes, because centuries have passed, right? And the standard of living have drastically progressed. But what humans struggle at its very core level really do not deviate very much. Now, I find it very bizarre to have to convince people about values like kindness, like goodness, like compassion. Bizarre that we'll be talking about it today. Because sure, humanity has progressed over the millenniums because of intelligence, right? Better technologies, better advances, better knowledge, better, everything. But if having greater technologies and having greater IQ is the solution, then we wouldn't have had so many well-educated troublemakers, right? Well-educated evil persons. Pain and hurt in this world would be on a declining trend. As the world progresses, right? We should have known better to learn from our history than to repeat the history. But this isn't the case, isn't it? So what I'm saying is it is incomplete. That while we become, for lack of better words, richer, cooler, trendier, smarter than the past, than the previous generations, so we speak, so we think that we are better than our, older generations people, we also got to become better humans at the same time. The conversation about compassion, about kindness, about goodness, about generosity and empathy is never outdated. It's not just for it's for the children only. It's not for me, it's for the teenagers growing up. They need to learn. It's for the youth only. And I am a grown adult in my 20 and 30 earning, thousands of dollars. I don't need to know about empathy. That's not true. Right? In fact, we need it more than ever because every generation needs to learn compassion. And every age, you have got to grow to become better. We live in a connected, if not hyper-connected world, right? We are affected by what's happening around us as much as we affect what's around us. For bad, but also for a lot of tremendous good. There is a ripple effect of our actions. So there are a lot of good stories, I want to share with you. One of which is, there was a woman in St. Petersburg, Florida. She started a pay it forward movement that caused 377 other customers to treat complete strangers, the naked strangers, a cup of Starbucks. So it was a 11-hour long, chain of kindness that just, go on and on until probably the shop closes, right? It inspired so many other chains to do the same thing, to be kind to someone else. Another one is about this woman called Tracy Washel. She was in line at a grocer's store, and there was this man ahead of her that, seemed to forget his wallet and could not pay for a few of his items. So Washel decided she's going to pay for this man. And the man asked her for her name and took notice of the shirt, right, which displayed where she worked. Then, about a month later, she was approached by her company's charity foundation representatives who informed her that there was a man who wished to donate in her name for $10,000. The man who wished to remain anonymous went so far to contact the VP of their philanthropy of their company to share how this small gesture, and it's not a lot of money, in fact, that she has paid, that has really impacted him and he wants to bless others. See, when you empathize, when you are compassionate, it creates a ripple effect of goodness. So I really want to encourage us to be active, in the way that we love, in the way that we care. So I want to share with us another fascinating idea in quantum physics, and it's called the quantum entanglement. Okay, so what is quantum entanglement? Is basically when a pair of electrons are generated, interact, or are in close or share close spatial proximity, their spin state, the way they spin, can get entangled, which is what scientists call the quantum entanglement. So when a pair of electrons get entangled, they will only have opposite spins. So if one is measured to have an upspin, the other one will immediately becomes a downspin. So physicists have observed and theorized that entangled electrons can be entangled even when they are very, very, very far apart. And we're talking about galaxies apart. It's interesting, this is the point, because we know in the real world that nothing and no information can travel faster than the speed of light. And quantum entanglement is spooky in that no matter how far the entangled electrons are, they are connected instantly. Information of one electron is instantaneously transferred to the other faster than the speed of light. So it's as good as teleportation, right? So one observation of this is our atomic clocks. So the quantum logic clocks will neither lose or gain a second in some 33 billion years because they are entangled. The clocks will not be affected by local differences and would instead solely measure the passage of time. Basically, it means all the clock will be able to become one pendulum. So 3 physicists won 2022 Nobel Prize in Physics for their findings about this. They successfully conducted experiments proving entanglement, that when particles are linked, whatever happens to one particle determines what happens to the others instantaneously. Well, quantum entanglement is still in development, right? Quantum physics is still in development. We don't know how it works. Scientists don't know how it works, but we know it works. We know it exists. So at this point in time, maybe some of you will be wondering, what's quantum physics got to do with me, right? Well, this may impact us since fundamentally everything in our real world is made of atoms, of electrons, of neutrons, and we see protons. So it can have some impact to humans, but it's still in development. But the thing is, I find it so fascinating that we are all connected. That it's so true at the subatomic level, right? But it's also true in the real world that we live in. That we are connected beings affecting and being affected by the world that we live in. So we all can do better at bringing kindness into our world. So we are not perfect, right? Humans do good and they can also do evil. So to be compassionate is not to deny what is right and what is wrong. But it is to extend forgiveness, is to extend a helping hand, is not to invoke violence for violence. From a scientist's point of view, compassion reduces aggression and violence, and it makes a society more resilient. So psychologist Davis, he puts it, within a society, even if you have small proportions of people feeling compassionate for others, it will produce a cascade effect of forgiveness that serves as a brake on escalation and violence. And that's how society becomes resilient and go longer. If not, we'll just end up killing one another off. So do unto others what you want others to do unto you. That's the first thing. The second is we are more alike than we are different. One idea to help us to be more compassionate is to know that, hey, we are more alike than we are different. So we might not be equals in the privileges we have, right? The titles we own, the strengths or the struggles that we have, or even the life experiences. But we are equal as humans. Which is why Jesus says, right, in 41, 42, he says, it's easy to see a smudge on your neighbor's face and be oblivious to the ugly sneer on your own. Do you have the nerve to say, let me wash your face for you, when your own face is distorted by contempt? Is this I know better than you mentality. I am different than you mentality. I am holier than you mentality, instead of living your own part. So don't think of yourself better or holier than someone else. We are more alike than we think we are. And very often, our ego is in the way of compassion and kindness. That time and time again, we always say this. That subconsciously, when we think we are better than this person, we don't listen into people very well. And we don't connect very well. And that's when we are quick to judge, we're quick to ostracize, we're quick to segregate, to say who's in, who's out, who I can relate to, who I can't. Or when we feel that we are so different and so special than other people, we are sure to feel that no one can understand us and that we are all alone by ourselves. If that is you and you're feeling all alone all the time, then maybe it's time to put away your ego and to put away your emo, right? That you're not that special. Because the truth is, we are more similar than we are different. It's just that we are really good at spotting the difference. So I love this study done by psychologist David DiStefano, the director of Northeastern University Social Emotions Lab on the science of compassion. So he explores the condition of the human heart. Whether humans by nature is selfish and brutal, and we need religion and philosophies to rein us in. Or there are impulses in us to be good. It's compassion in our DNA to reach out to others, but it's only corrupted because, of our desire to want to be selfish and maximize our own goal. So he found, very interesting, he found that the answer is both and neither. Both and neither, which kind of doesn't answer the question. Both in that it's a balance between selfish and selfless desire that characterize human nature. We have both selflessness and selfishness. Neither selfish nor selfless, because no one of these motives are fundamental and basic than the other. Don't worry, I'll explain to you. So my words is, no one is above and beneath the other. We can all be as virtuous or as less virtuous than the other. Both selfishness, selflessness exist in the conscious and non-conscious minds. Neither of these are relevant because which one of these emerges, whether you're selfish, whether you're selfless in the moment, is determined by what's going on in the world. And he is set to find out, right, how can we encourage the right ones to surface so that we can be more compassionate? So on Christmas Eve, to start off with the story, Christmas Eve 1914, right, World War I, in the muddy trenches of the Western Front, a remarkable thing happened. So it came to be called the Christmas Truce. The British and the Germans were fighting in trenches in part of Belgium, and it was a very long and bloody battle. On top of that, they were cold, they were wet, they were covered with mud, right? But on Christmas Eve, as the British were looking across the no man's island, they began to see light, and then they began to hear people singing. So they couldn't tell what they were singing because it was in German. But they soon realized by the melody that it was Christmas carols. And what happened next was, in their own words, very amazing. So in the darkness, some of the British soldiers began to sing back. And then there was a shout on the other side. The Germans spoke in English with a very heavy German accent saying to come over. And the men, both sides, came out of their trenches and they started celebrating together in the no man's land. You need to know that these were men from the day before were trying to kill each other, right? And here they are exchanging, greetings, trading songs, showcasing, photos of their families, drinking together, joining in a spontaneous holiday party in the cold night. Well, it's very bizarre, right? Well, the likely reason why this happened is in those moments, they stopped seeing themselves as Germans and British, and they saw themselves as fellow Christians celebrating Christmas. It's very puzzling because how do we display such a level of compassion in one moment and then cruelty in the very next moment? When are we more compassionate and when are we not? Which is basically what David DiStefano and his team did an experiment to test this out. So what they did, very interesting, they did was they brought people into the lab. And the subjects, they have to sit opposite another person who is one of their people. And they have all of them put on their headphones. And the job is to, as they hear the tone, to tap their hands on the table. Very easy job. So for some of the subjects, their tones are arranged such that they will tap their hands in unison with the other person. So they will tap together. Okay? For others, their tones were randomized so that there will be no association and there will be no synchrony. So the person will tap, and then 5 seconds later, the other person will tap, and then it will just go on like that. And after that, the subjects will watch one of the person whom they were tapping with get cheated by someone else in this test. We will not elaborate how does the cheating happens, but they know very well that, if something unjust is happening. They wanted to see if any of these subjects will be motivated to feel this person's pain and come to the organizer and come to them and say that, you know what, this is unfair, how can I help this person? And what they found is that a simple act of joint movement, in this case like tapping of hands, right, made people feel more similar to each other. The subjects cannot tell why they want to help this person. It's just that their gut is telling them they feel similar to this person that they're tapping with for the past few minutes and they want to help them. The results were in the condition when they felt more similar to the person because they were tapping together with them, 50% of the people came up to ask if they can help their person, stranger. Less than 20% did when they don't have that similarity of tapping their hands, even though the other person is suffering in exactly the same way. What this means is very subtle markers, right? Like tapping your hands can increase compassion by over 30%. What this suggests is that it's not the severity or the objective facts of, the distress, the unjustness, the disaster that motivate us to feel compassion or to help people. It's whether or not we see ourselves in that person. Whether we see that this person is just like me, just as human as I am. There's nothing magical about tapping hands. See, so what this means for us is that maybe, when you see someone, instead of saying, I'm 40 and you are 20, right? And then immediately, no, we have an age gap, we have a generation gap, we have all these gaps. To go, hey, we both love soccer. And we can talk about that. And we can connect with that. Instead of saying, you are from JC and uni and I'm from Poly and ITE, to go, hey, I realize that we both love and have that same, liking of music and jazz music. And to connect with that. We have differences, it's very real, which is the beauty of diversity, right? But we got to remind ourselves to look at how similar we are. Being more compassionate starts from seeing others instead of just me and whether other people can fit into my box. It starts from seeing that we are more similar than we are different. Okay? The third one is freely receive, freely give. To be more compassionate is to take on this mindset, freely received, freely I give. So Jesus is the one who says this, not me, to his disciples. Freely you have received, freely give. And he teaches at length about generosity, right? Which we read earlier on. Give away your life, and you will find life given back. Giving, not getting, is the way. Generosity begets generosity. However, today, I want to bring our focus to not the second part of what Jesus says, but to the first part of what Jesus says, to freely receive. Why? Why freely receive? Because we can't give people what we don't have and what we don't know. Before I go on, let me caveat by saying this. Sometimes our selfishness finds this as an easy crutch, right? They say, I can't give because I don't have. I can't be generous because I'm not from a well-to-do family like so-and-so. Or I'm not a millionaire like so-and-so. Wait till I get my first job and then I'll be generous. Wait till I get my first flat and my first house. And then very soon it becomes, wait till I get my car, wait till I have my kid, wait till my kid goes to primary school, secondary school, and it goes on. And you just never give back or reciprocate, to say the least. let alone being generous. And it isn't because you don't have, it's because you are not willing to share or to give what you do have. So we got to be honest with what we have, okay? And to be honest with our selfishness and not find too many excuses. In fact, for some of us who struggles with finding joy and genuine love and friendships, I find the best way is to give. The best solution out of emo, out of I'm so poor thing, out of nobody cares for me and only I care about myself, is to give. It's to give. In fact, it's to be the first to give. To give love, to give joy to others, to serve others. And interestingly, it will boomerang like verse 39 we read earlier, right? Goodness has a way of finding its way back to you. That's it. There are times we cannot give people what we don't have and what we don't know. So I know many youth that I talk to sharing how they worry about getting into relationships, getting married one day, or potentially having a kid because their parents are divorced. Their parents fight and are on bad terms for as long as they can remember. And they always wonder, how do I know what love is? Or what a healthy family looks like? How do I give to someone else? How do I create a happy family when I don't know? Or someone says, I am so deeply broken, angry and unforgiving, bitter and just giving up on everything. I just can't help but to hurt myself and to hurt people around me. I'm angry with people, I criticize, I judge, I blame, I lash out on others for what I'm feeling. It's like how Paulo, a novelist, he says this, how people treat other people sometimes is a direct reflection of how they feel about themselves. So how do I give when pain is spilling all over the place uncontrollably? You are hurting people because you are hurt. And I want to say it happens. It happens. I have hurt people and have to apologize after for what I have said out of my pain. I have judged and criticized people. I have gotten angry with people. I have definitely been my worst critic and crucified my own self-worth. So it is understandable, but it is no good, right? It is just a lose-lose situation for everybody, and it's a miserable way to live your life. There has to be a way out of this loop for you. And so I encourage us to freely receive. To receive kindness from another, to receive blessings, goodness with an open heart, to put aside your feelings of unworthiness and confidently receive. To put aside your ego and your pride to humbly receive. And I have to caveat this once again, that I mean freely receive. I don't mean demand kindness from another as though they owe it to you, and you get angry when people don't treat you well. Okay? I don't even mean ask people to bless you. Okay? What I meant is freely receive. Freely receive what kindness and goodness that's shown to you with an open and a grateful heart. Especially when we are in pain. Because it is the time when our heart needs to have goodness and kindness the most because our heart is hurting. But it's also the hardest to freely receive because of our own ego and our own pride trying to protect ourselves. So we gotta put aside our ego of saying, I can do it all by myself. I don't need anybody else. If no one sees me struggling, I am not struggling. That kind of a sentence. Well, because frankly, you can't get better this way. Simon Sinek shared this in his podcast. And if you don't know him, he's a speaker and author of a number of leadership books. I love listening to his podcast as a fellow little optimist. So I would call myself an optimist. So he has a rule with his friend, and that is no crying alone. He has a rule with his friends. So he will have his friends call him, or he calls his friend, if any of them is overwhelmed with frustration. It can be just a minute to hold space, to be open, to lean on, to ask for help. So for what we don't have, for what we don't know, I want to encourage us to learn to receive freely. Okay? The interesting thing about life is the way life is for us, for many of us, not all of us, okay? There is an element in life that is not in our control. What do I mean? Life is not meritocratic in that there are times you may work really, really, really hard and you still fall short of that A and that B or the pass on your papers. You still fall short of that final goal in the net, in a game. The plan that you have dreamed of, the cause or the job that you have hoped for. But then, at the same time, there are times you just get a check from a distant relative. An A on the paper when you just wink it. An upgrade offer, to a hotel room suite. A double egg in your egg muffins burger. I steal Edwin's code, right, from 1 week ago, which has happened to me before. When I opened, I was like, wow, there's a double egg in the egg muffin. Very blessed and very surprised. Or a kind gesture from a stranger or from someone you did not expect. In short, there seems to be a variable of life that's out of control, right? Whatever you name it, luck, chance, bless, not bless, or I call it faith, grace. We receive what we don't deserve. Yes, both the good and the bad. What I do want to encourage us is to freely receive, is to accept. I find people who don't allow for grace in life, for grace in their life, for possibility, for faith, for chance, for some unknowns in their life, maybe even for God in their life, what happens is that when bad things happen to them, especially when they have worked very, very hard for it, they become terribly broken and defeated. They just cannot wrap their mind around why did it turn out this way. They have worked so hard for it in every way possible and, not even come close to what they want. And then strangely, for these people, when good things happen to them, especially when they have not worked for it, they question themselves. That's the first response. They feel undeserving. They become very skeptical of people's intention. I don't mean you shouldn't be wise. You should. But what I mean is there's a difference between being wise and being skeptical. So it's very strange, right? Very odd. And the more I know God and know about God, I'm increasingly amazed at how He works. Now in Psalms 86:15 it says, "But you, my Lord, are a God of compassion and mercy. You are very patient and full of faithful love." The compelling thing is God loves all of humanity so tremendously. It's unbelievable. He freely gives His love, His grace, even to the point His life for us. He is what I call goodness in the purest form. And the thing is, we are never the same again when we are shown this level of kindness. When we experience generosity, something inside us is touched, right? It's transformed. Even when a human, is kind to you and extremely generous to you, you can't help it but to feel something. Let alone from God's pure love. Which is why I think I've seen so many friends, they just become different as a person. They could come from the harshest of backgrounds and yet be such a loving individual. It's unbelievable. They can be in such a hopeless place in their life and yet be able to kind of recover and be a whole person again. I've seen people just completely moved and overwhelmed when they know and experience the God of love, who loves them unconditionally, who gives graciously, who believes completely. And I believe God is here, right here with us. And He wants to give us His love, His kindness, His goodness, His grace, His forgiveness, and for us to freely receive. And that's what Easter is all about, right? That God came to give us His life, to give up His life, so that we may have life in its fullest measure. And I want to invite us and invite you to freely receive because it can change your life. We freely receive. And I conclude this point and cycle back to say that generosity is to freely receive and is to freely give. Freely receive and freely give. Be generous, be kind, be compassionate. And we come full circle, right, about compassion. I started off the message asking this question, but is it we or is it me? And maybe it is not we or me. Maybe it is that we bring out the best me. That together, when we are compassionate, when we are kind, when we extend forgiveness, goodness to someone else, we will bring out the best me individually.